Welcome to Leadership Talks. I'm your host, Martin Rowinski, CEO and co-founder of Boardsi. In this episode, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Fred Petito. Fred's strategic leadership has accelerated growth strategies for early-stage companies and those in private equity and VC portfolios. Beyond his roles in marketing, Fred is also a certified executive and leadership coach, where he empowers executives to cultivate success, driving mindsets and strategies. Join us as we explore Fred's journey, his approach to leadership, and his insights on personal transformation for executive growth. Fred, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martin.
Should I call you Dr. Fred, or is Fred okay?
No, I think Fred is sufficient. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'll start blushing if you keep on calling me Dr. Fred.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So Fred, can you share with us your professional journey to becoming an executive coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had quite a varied, journey. I started actually as an attorney. I practiced law in New York for 3 years. Did some litigation, commercial litigation, a little bit of corporate type work. Then in the late 90s, I actually got involved with one of the high-flying digital IPO startups that was in the consulting space. And it was, I think they call it a poof IPO. 8 companies came together. They all kind of combined their different offerings, like some McKinsey type folks and Anderson Consulting folks and some communications advertising people. They went public, and then within a couple of years, it was all gone. So I kind of got into the marketing space in that late 90s, early 2000s internet bubble, which it was. And then for the last about 20 years or so, I've been kind of in chief strategy officer roles at some private equity backed agencies, marketing services firms working in biotech, and then some a few large global firms working also in biotech, life sciences, biopharma. So I've been involved with that side of the house. So about 2 years ago, I did just, after working in 20 plus years doing, life sciences and pharma, which is not necessarily the most rewarding experience. It's a highly regulated. It's hard to be kind of creative and strategic when everything's kind of dictated by federal regulations and whatnot. So I started coaching. I started doing executive coaching. I went out and got certified. I'm certified as a executive coach. I've done leadership coach training with the Wiley group that specializes in leadership coaching. I also am getting my certification in team coaching, which is super exciting, and I'm really enjoying it. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. And yeah, you're right. I mean, corporate and especially in medical, you got a lot of red tape. So that can be pretty boring and slow down, right?
Well, I mean, you could be as creative as you like, but no matter what you say or do, you typically can't do it. So after a while, after 20 years of saying that sounds great, but you can't do it, it's not the most rewarding experience. That said, it's good work and it's important work.
Yeah. So as an executive and leadership coach, what key areas do you focus on to help executives advance in their careers?
Yeah, I really like to focus on helping executives who are struggling with operational issues and, in kind of the thick of it, meaning that means they are a president or a C-level or even, a director, a senior director who is actually, trying to navigate a complex business environment. I know there are some executive coaches, they do a lot of transition work, or they do, they help executives during career changes. That's not so much my bread and butter. It's more of I think where I excel with, my background and my analytical training. I have a doctorate in business. I've done a lot of, I both have a lot of hands-on experience, operational experience, and strategic experience, but also a lot of training. So I find that's where, the greatest impact I can make. And as part of that, it's the leadership side, right? So they may be dealing operational issues, but there's a leadership challenge that's associated with that, right? So how do they show up as their best selves and lead as effectively as they're possible while you have all this challenging operational environment around you? Because it's easy to sit back and theorize about how you're going to lead and visualize that and have a great inner narrative about that. But then when you kind of show up in the real world, it isn't as easy as it seems. It's like the Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. So I think that's a good metaphor for, the leadership challenge. And that's why, being a leader is hard, because things are never static. They're always dynamic.
Absolutely. How do you advise leaders to navigate complex interpersonal and organizational dynamics effectively?
Yeah, I think I think it sounds like a simple question, and on its face it is, but when you unpack that, there's a lot of dimensions to it. And I think the first thing that I would advise or coach any leader is to be authentic, be themselves, right? You can't be someone else. I mean, I think that the first thing you need to do is you need to show up as yourself, and no matter how much change is around you, you need to stay true to who you are. How that person manifests, I think, is another story, right? So as long as the first thing is to stay true to, understand your values, what's important to you, and stick to that. And you want to be able to align your behaviors with your internal values. I think that's the first thing. So once someone's able to kind of ground themselves in who they are authentically, then you can start working on some of the what I maybe call higher order skills. And I like to think of them, two big ones for me that I like to focus on is this idea of adaptive capacity and adaptive leadership. So the idea is that many leaders get caught up in an environment and I would say even in a world where their thoughts, behaviors, and actions are more guided by the world around them than their internal kind of narrative or their internal values, right? So that's that kind of they lack that kind of ability to actually shape events around them, and they're shaped more by the events. So if the idea of developing adaptive capacity is trying to constantly be aware of how you're thinking and feeling about things around you. And instead of being reactive, it's being creative and appropriate for the situation. So it's not about getting smarter in terms of your IQ. It's about increasing awareness of your thought processes, thinking critically about how you think, kind of meta awareness, and then bringing an independent frame of mind to situations. A lot of my clients, me also, I remember when I was kind of working in very difficult situations, oftentimes you're not as intentional as you'd like. You're not as creative in the moment. You're more reactive, right? You're more instinctive. And that's that kind of, your system tends to get hijacked by situations, and being able to slow that down and slow yourself down and bring a more intentional mindset to things is what I like to call adaptive leadership. And it's not something that I created. That's something that has been around for quite a number of years, and comes from the work of developmental psychologists like Robert Keegan. And so this idea of being adaptive to the situation is all about cultivating a higher sense of awareness and ability to self-control and regulate yourself and show up in a more effective way. So that's another important pillar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you touched on a couple of things that I've actually written articles about. Transparency. I've written about leadership and being a transparent leader. And another one that I like to talk about is vulnerability. A lot of leaders try to protect themselves and create a box where, they don't they're untouchable, they're not vulnerable. But I think being vulnerable really opens people up and gets your team to open up to you as you open up to them, showing them that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be open. And the other one is being, I guess the old saying, open door policy. I mean, everybody, I think we're up to about 200 employees now, and everybody's given, all of our executives and co-founders, they have literally direct access to us cell phone wise, which is, I think, in a way, a blessing, because there's a lot of scams out there. They get weird text messages from not my cell phone, but from other cell phone numbers saying, it's me. Can you send me a gift card? Because I'm busy.
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy stuff out there. So I'm so glad.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I mean, I think you talked about vulnerability. I think, I've been in leadership roles where I've had like chief strategy officer roles where I've had, one of my clients right now is leading a group, and I was in the same situation several occasions where you have 5 or 6 different marketing disciplines reporting into you, and market research, social media, search, user experience design, and there's no way that anybody is able to have mastery over these very complex, specialized areas. And to be an effective leader, sometimes there's the feeling that I need to know all these things better than everyone else. And it's not about the technical knowledge; it's about the ability to, make people feel supportive, and also give people both the agency and the support they need to thrive and be successful on their own. So you're right. I mean, and it's not always easy to kind of subjugate that ego that says I need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be the most intelligent, emotionally intelligent person in the room, and empower other people to be the most intelligent in their domains of expertise. So I think that's a very true insight. Another big area that I like to work on is kind of some mindset shifts, right? I think that a lot of executives, especially as they get really senior at the C level and president, stuff like that, they're so talented and so smart that they kind of tend to believe that they know everything, right? There's this mindset of certainty, and we've all seen in over the years that, markets move so fast, competitors move so fast. Everything is always kind of changing, a lot of volatility. And so the mindset that usually thrives in that environment is not the certain mindset, because you just don't know what you don't know. It's the curious mindset. And I think that's a big distinction is kind of that, shifting from the kind of know-it-all confident person to the curious kind of humble person that I think is more effective in the kind of environment that we work in these days.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's no way everybody or anybody is the smartest, or if you think you know it all, then you're going to stop learning, and that's when you lose. So information's moving so fast these days. You got to keep learning, and you got to be a sponge and always just acquire more and more information so you can make better decisions. I mean, that's my thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, bringing an open mind, that curious mindset is, and I think that a lot of executives oftentimes fall into the trap of they bring they bring old solutions to new problems. And many times, if you kind of have that, sometimes the curse of experience, right? You've done something similar 4 or 5 times, and you have a solution that's worked, but this time is different. If you're bringing this kind of closed-minded, certainty mindset to the table, you're probably not going to get the results that you were hoping for, because you're not really asking the questions you need to ask to really illuminate what's happening and what you need to do to strategize to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So these days, obviously, there is a lot of talk about executive coaching. I mean, I can't tell you how many times on LinkedIn I've been hit up by executive coaches, and I mean, it's just all over the place, right? And now, slowly and picking up, there's more talk about team coaching.
Yep.
Can you talk about this a little bit and the difference? And I think you approach both, correct? You do team
Yeah,
coaching?
absolutely. Yeah. I think team coaching is a lot more complex. Number one, that's just to start. Um, and I think it's different in a lot of ways. Team coaching is, you kind of start with the premise that, first of all, most teams actually don't achieve the goals they're set out for, right? Most teams are underperforming. And it's not because of individual performance. It's not because people aren't doing their best or effective. It's because the organization around them may not be setting them up for success. Their goals might be unclear, and then internally, a lot of teams just haven't done the work to. Again, it's not no one's fault. It may not just be a skill set people or need that people are aware of, but they don't have the kinds of communication and collaboration that are really required for a team to work harmoniously and effectively. They don't have the ways of working articulated and defined. And so working as a team is not a natural undertaking, right? It requires a whole other level of thinking and planning and relationship building. And people, I think, and organizations have always taken it for granted. We put a group together; they're going to work well as a team, and some do, many don't. And it's something that I think has been taken for granted for a long time. And at the end of the day, it's a team is it's a small, social microcosm, right? And so the things that make a team successful or unsuccessful are how people get together, how people get along, how they communicate, how they resolve conflict, how they collaborate with each other, and requires a lot of forethought and a lot of discipline to pull all those things together. And I think team coaching over the last 5 or so years is starting to become a little bit more a thing because people realize it's hard. Getting teams to function at a high level is not easy, number one. And now when you have highly distributed teams over, Zoom and remote work and hybrid work, it's even more difficult. So it's, I think it taps and requires, I think, more kind of a more holistic approach, number one. And it, of course, brings in organizational development issues. It brings in individual coaching issues. So it's a little bit more complex.
Do you enjoy it?
I enjoy it. I do. Yeah, I do. Awesome. It's certainly something a little bit more substantial to me because of just the sheer complexity of it.
That's awesome. What does personal transformation mean for a leader, and why is it crucial in today's dynamic workplace?
I'm going to answer the second question first. So
okay.
I think it's I think the idea of leadership is certainly the expectations and what's needed to be successful. I think has gotten a lot more. The bar is a lot higher than it was, say, 10 years ago. I think the relational and the qualitative side of it, the emotional intelligence side of it, I think has gotten more important. You still need the technical skills and technical knowledge, but I think those soft skills, if you will, I think have become more important. I think so when I think of, I like this, somebody has a headline, it's like, grow personally, thrive professionally, right? I think the idea behind that headline is that in order to be a highly effective leader, I think you need to grow as a person, grow. And I think that starts with self-awareness. I think that's the kind of the first. It's really the building block of I think transformative growth for a leader, and it's leadership growth, but it's personal transformation, right? You grow as a person and you transform as a leader. And one of the places that I like to start is kind of teasing out this gap between, we all walk around with this ideal in our head of who we are as people and as leaders. And, we do like to tell ourselves positive stories about ourselves. Otherwise we'd all be depressed. So, it's good to have a positive self-image of yourself. But it's also good to understand where the gap is between that positive self-image and that image of you as a leader or an executive or whatever, and what you actually do in real life. And that's where the transformation starts to come, right? So once you start noticing the gap between your ideal self and your intentions and your actions and behaviors, that's where you start unlocking growth. And I do like to think of, my partner's a therapist, so I think this probably, I picked this up maybe just in osmosis, but I like to think of, we all carry our different internal selves, right? We have, one of them is we have these internal personas, right? One is the intuitive self, and this is maybe your innovative self. We have our thinking self, right? This is more of our left brain, if you will, or rational side that it helps us analyze and make decisions, analyze information. We have a compassionate self, right? This is the emotional side, which is so important. This is the relational, how we manage our relationships with people and with ourselves. And then there's the kind of the acting self. This is the kind of the willpower and the motivation that gets you to act. And I think if you it seems very simplistic to break it down in this way, where everybody is very multidimensional and human beings are very complex, and you add a organizational dynamic and a team dynamic around it, that it gets even more complex. But if you think about these four personas as a way to think about how you're showing up, day to day at work, you start asking yourself some questions like, how do these different personas operate in me today? How am I showing up? Do I anchor heavily on that intuitive self, or that thinking self, or that compassionate self, whatever? And then it's like, how do I balance them? You can't be one dimensional. You need to be multidimensional. You need to show up in a way that is most appropriate and effective to the situation. And I think that's the idea behind situational leadership, right? Is kind of what persona to kind of lean into authentically, of course. And that requires self-awareness. That requires situational and contextual awareness. And that requires we talked earlier about the adaptive self. You need to kind of slow down that processing and be a little bit more intentional and deliberate. And so I think that's how I think about transformation.
That's awesome. You touched on a lot of stuff I've written about, so that's really good.
It's good stuff. I mean, there's so much, great idea. I like to lean into evidence-based modalities and whatnot. And I think that there are things that, incrementally you work on these things over time, you're going to become a more self-aware and effective leader. And I really believe that I believe in that. That's why I do this, and it is transformative, but it takes time.
Yeah, it sure does. It doesn't happen overnight. And speaking of time and future, based on your experience, what trends do you foresee in leadership in the coming years?
I think it's just this continuing journey about unlocking that creative side of it that I just talked about, right? I think the 20th century was certainly all about, was much more of a left brain type century. I think that the 21st century is a little bit more about creativity, and I think the leaders of the 21st century are already a quarter of the way through. But I feel like I think it's the people who are able to unlock and cultivate creativity in the people that work for them and the teams that they lead. I think that is where leaders should focus, right? I think technical skills are important, functional expertise is important, but I don't think that's going to be rewarded as much in the future as those that are able to create some kind of multiplier effect by unlocking creativity in people.
Got it. Awesome. I got 3 quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
So for those long strategy sessions, do you prefer coffee or tea?
I'm a coffee drinker.
With cream or just black?
Whole milk.
When it comes to gaining new insights, do you lean towards a book or a podcast?
I love my Kindle. I'm a Kindle reader. So I don't have a lot of, I have hundreds, but I certainly have near 100 books on my Kindle. A lot of them are fiction. A lot of them are business books. Also love history. So a little bit more on the book side.
When it comes to history, since you mentioned that, this is not one of the questions, but what type of history?
I jump around quite a bit. I do have a soft spot for kind of English history. All the I just read a book about the Wars of the Roses, in England, and it's so fascinating. We all think we all live such civilized lives today, and a few hundred years ago it wasn't like that. So it reminds you of how far we've come as a people in civilization. And so when you read books like that, even though it was the 14th century, whatever, the scale of brutality, that's not why I read it. It's interesting from a geopolitical and from understanding people behavior, but it's just such a fascinating. So I do tend to lean out more towards European history.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Are you more of a morning person or a night owl when it comes to productivity?
No, I'm a morning person.
Morning?
Absolutely.
How early do you start?
I usually set my alarm for 7, which isn't that early, but it's pretty early. So I'm usually working by 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Here is a scenario. You're on a stage in front of 30,000 people. Among them, there's one individual for whom your next words will be life-changing. What you say will not only transform their life, but will also lead to a ripple effect of positivity, potentially impacting over 100,000 people. You have 3 minutes on this stage for your final message. What would you say to that one person who needs to hear it most?
I think it goes back to that whole thing about adaptive leadership. It's if people, I do think that when people are able to disrupt I think it's the behavioral patterns that guide the intuition that guide instincts that guide their lives, and are able to make incremental improvements on how they engage with people, lead teams, things like that. I think that's one of the biggest ahas that I've seen coming from the behavioral sciences, in the last 50 years is that ability to translate changing the way you think through increased self-awareness, and the impact it has on your behavior and the things that you are able to then unlock around you. So I think as a leader, it's that ability to increase your personal impact and power as a leader.
Okay.
I think that.
Oh, okay. So pretty much wrapping up right now, but I got a question. Since you like to read books, have you, and I didn't find anything online as far as on your LinkedIn or anything. Have you written a book? Are you a book author?
No, but I published a dissertation recently. It's not a book, but it's a dissertation. I think it's called Brand Equity, Firm Value, and the Moderating Impact of Industry Dynamics. If you're interested in that.
Any plans on writing a book?
I would probably invest or energies in speaking rather than writing a book, I think. But maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
So possibly those are your next steps?
Yeah, I think so. A book, maybe. I think speaking more lightly.
Got it. Anything else you would love to leave our audiences with? Any other words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, we talked a lot about coaching. We talked a lot about transformation. And I do think that I've worked with a coach in the past, and I really, truly believe that there's a lot of value that comes out of coaching. But I think the most important thing is that the people that do come to coaching, they bring a kind of open mind and open heart, and that's where you're going to get the results. So I think some people, they come to a coach and they expect them to kind of make create the transformation for them, or it's just, that can never work that way, right? I mean, they can only help through kind of prompting and guiding and mirroring and asking the questions that unlock those thought processes and those emotions. But if you're not kind of open to that process, you're not going to get what you were hoping for.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time and joining us on Leadership Talks. And
likewise, thanks, Martin.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Talks. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful conversations with industry leaders. Your support means a lot to us.